Hi there. Just before we start our episode, I have some important announcements. Some of you have been waiting to hear who's won in the raffle, and so I'm going to let you know in just a few moments. I also wanted you to know how wonderful it's been to read all the reviews that have come in. It's just been heartwarming, and it's been helpful to see what has been working for you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to write on Apple Podcasts. So listen carefully to see if your name is announced. I'm going to say first names and last initials, and I want to make sure that you check your email so that you can respond to the team and be able to collect on your prize. Here we go. Digital winners. 2 of them, Karen H. and Vanessa N. We also have 3 winners that win sessions with me. Those women are Kimberly E., Cassie H., and Jules. And just before I get to the cash prize winner list, I want to let you know that we're so excited to see that many of the reviews came from other countries than the U.S. So in addition to listeners from all over the states, we also received reviews from Brazil, Mexico, Holland, Israel, and South Korea, and there could be more. All right, now here we go with our cash prize winners. The $50 winners are Jonna M., Callie S., Emily M., and Yael E. And for our final category, our $75 to $100 winners are Jessica H., Mary Ellen N., and Caroline A. So remember, if I've mentioned your name, be sure to check your email, and you have until the end of the month to claim your prize. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you. Here we go now with our regularly scheduled episode. Enjoy. Hello, I'm Tessa Lynne Alburn. Welcome to the Say Yes to Your Soul podcast, where we empower women to connect with their souls and shine in their business. If you are ready to embrace your brilliance, create meaningful connections, and be compensated for your specific gifts, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore inspiring stories, practical insights, unique points of view, and soulful strategies, all to help you thrive. So let's dive on into this transformative journey together. Tune in and say yes to your soul. Hello there. I'm so glad you're here and tuning in to this episode on healing the wounded self. Now, one of the systems that I have in my business in order to best support my clients, I have a framework. And the framework that I am following is called the Roadmap to Becoming Excellent. And you can think of this roadmap like a way to look at stages of transformation or a cycle of transformation. And today I'm going to share with you some specifics around stage 2 of this roadmap. And that stage is called healing the wounded self. Now, right away, you might have just had a reaction to that, just hearing it going, I don't want to deal with my wounded self. Like that just sounds too heavy. That's too hard. That's this, it's that. Or I've done all that and it only seemed to help so much. So I want to give you a little bit more about healing the wounded self and some ways that I approach it with clients and some of the things that I've seen over the years, experienced and seen with people that I've worked with, and also things on my own journey of having been through all kinds of different healing modalities, having experienced those for myself to try and overcome both trauma, injury, emotional damage, etc., and just to be successful in life. I may have shared a little bit of this at some other point when I was sharing about my business specifically in a signature system. And I was probably shared with you that I had looked at Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, is what he called it. It's essentially a cycle of transformation, and there's something like 17 steps in it. It's very complex. Most of us cannot look at something like that and implement it in our lives. So for the people that I work with, what I've discovered is most of what they need is within the 8 steps that I work with. And when we come to healing the wounded self, you might say, well, do I need to do that? I don't know. That just sounds too weird or hard. And I don't think I need to do that. I'm just going to do something else. So what I want you to know is when people are in their sessions, when they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I've tried this thing over and over and over, and I'm still doing this behavior, or I'm still feeling this way. Like, why can't I just feel differently about this thing? Because I know in my mind I should feel better, but I don't. Right? So there are various symptoms that indicate that there's part of us that still needs healing. And I'm not talking about putting a bandage on it, because that's not healing. Healing is the process. Let's say you get a wound on your arm, you get a scratch. Oh, my cat scratched me because there was a situation at the house with workers, and she got very freaked out, and suddenly I found myself with a big scratch on my arm. Well, I needed a week for that scratch to actually heal. Now, did I bandage it? Yes, that is a helpful step, but it doesn't cause the healing. The healing needs to occur in its own way that we don't always know exactly what that's going to be, but we want to create the right conditions for it. So, for example, with the scratch on my arm, I cleanse the wound. I put on, my lavender oil, and then I put on some colloidal silver, and I sealed it up with some bandages for just a couple days. And then I checked it, and I made sure the bandages were clean, and I reapplied the colloidal silver, etc., etc. And a few days went by, and there's still a pretty big gash on my arm. And then a few more days went by, and I noticed, it looks like it's almost like sealing up. There's just like a little line in there. And I knew the skin had sealed, and I felt safe enough. I could go out into the ocean, so I could do things that potentially were challenging to that wound. But I knew at a certain point it was okay, even though the cells of the skin had not entirely closed and were not looking perfect yet. As a matter of fact, it's been several weeks and they're still not looking perfect. There's a slight little scar there, but it's healed. It's healed enough that I don't have to put attention on it. I don't have to worry about it or fret about it or wonder, can I go into the ocean? Or can I put my hand in, do some cleaning things? Or do I need to continue to be concerned? It's because the healing process is now underway and it's already happening. Thank goodness. And I think healing the wounded self can be similar to that, but we do need to really address things so that they start to shift, and they start to shift in a way that is going to tip the scale so that healing takes place and we're not just continuing to have a wound. That salt is not getting put into it. That lemon juice isn't going into that wound. Ouch! Right? And so often in our lives, when we have emotional wounds or mental wounds or spiritual wounds, we can feel like we're getting attacked over and over and over. And the same with physical wounds. So we want to address the root and set the situation up so that it can actually heal, which is bringing us into a state of wholeness again, or a state of, we might think of it like a state of calm or of peace. It's a state of balance and a state of wholeness. So as I was considering what I wanted to share with you today, I was thinking about a number of clients who from time to time have said things like, I don't get this. Why am I still doing this thing? I can see that I don't want to do it. I know I don't want to do it. I say I don't want to do it. And yet I find myself doing it, right? So we're talking about a behavior, or somebody else, a different kind of person, or a person with a different type of wound might think or wonder, why is this still happening? The same old thing is happening. I don't understand it. I've worked on myself and I've done all this stuff, and this cycle is still happening, and I still feel this way or that way about it. But it's not working. So I would like to share with you 4 reasons. I'm going to share with you 4 reasons that is occurring in either one of those situations. And there may be some other situation that you're thinking of right now in your own life. It's some kind of repetition that isn't getting solved. And it can be annoying, it can be hurtful, it could be frustrating. It could cause one to go to a place of resignation and just want to push it away and move on no matter what. But it's still there. So the first reason that I would like to share with you is that when something like this shows up, there is a behavior that is more valued by you than other possibilities. In other words, the behavior is providing something that you need. At least on some level, you need it. For example, behaviors can provide a sense of security. We do a certain behavior, we know about what to expect. It makes us feel good. Behaviors can provide us an illusion of safety. If I do this thing, I'll be safe. Because behaviors that we repeat come from something that we already know. And so there's this illusion, I'm going to call it an illusion because it's not necessarily true that it provides safety, but we have an illusion that it does. And we can tell ourselves that we're doing something, and therefore I get credit for that. Like I have value for trying this thing and doing this behavior and continuing to do it again and again and working hard and making it better, but it's still the same behavior. And that leads to just running the same cycle over and over. Get more or less the same results and you feel more or less the same stuff, no matter what the situation is. The second reason that you may be experiencing something that's repetitive is that you have a mindset issue. Well, that's no big news. You've heard about that, right? Like, it's important to change your mindset. You've got to think a certain way in order to create a certain way, or to create a certain energy, or to bring in a new possibility, etc., etc. We all know there are mindset issues that we want to deal with. And there are a lot of things that come under that category. But mindset alone is not healing. When we address mindset, we also need to include the emotional world. And most of the time, we're not doing that. We're not feeling it in our bodies. We're not honest with what our emotions are feeling about the new mindset. So we can kind of layer on some inner conflict. Now, look, I think mindset issue stuff is great. It can really be amazing when we've already done a big portion of the healing and all we've got left is mindset. Clearing mindset's amazing. I literally cleared a mindset issue I had around a chronic illness. I thought forever I would have this thing. It was going to haunt me whenever I didn't want it. It was just a hassle. And it was painful. And I just didn't want to be sick. And I had done a lot of healing and I'd done all kinds of things to address the illness, and been to alternative care doctors and all that stuff, naturopaths, et cetera, et cetera. But I still needed to deal with the mindset issues around it. When I did that, it blew me away because I could then see possibilities that just weren't in the mix. They just weren't in there at all until I cleared my mindset issues. And when I did that, after having done all the healing first, suddenly I was free of the illness. So clearing mindset will work, and you want to do the deeper healing as well. Okay, let's get to number 3 on the list of reasons that things are still happening or you're running the same cycle. The third reason is that you do have trauma. You have some kind of trauma. Now, trauma is mostly thought of as a discrete incident, right? Like something happened, whether it was a car accident or you fell down or whatever it was, or somebody yelled at you or punished you for something. So there was emotional trauma and it was something you didn't even do. It could have been at any point in your life. Things like this. These specific events, discrete incidents, can be trauma that leave us out of balance, a little bit dissociated, not quite in our bodies, etc. However, they can be addressed. Even in the most extreme circumstances, which hopefully you are not dealing with. But if there were something very extreme, this is why you see a lot of vets now working with healing trauma so they don't have PTSD. But they can do something about it in many cases. Now, some people, of course, have had so much that it's just like taken away their core. But for most people, like yourself, that's not the case. You may have some specific incidents that you can work with. You can address them and you can rewrite them. Like this is the basis of NLP, for example. The way I think of it is NLP in its purest form. You call up an experience, you bring it into your imagination, and that triggers a whole bunch of responses inside of you. And so you bring it up almost like you are listening to an audio file, or I'll just use that as the example. You're listening to an audio file. Only this time you put scratches or blips in the audio. So it's a little less cohesive. It's a little less decipherable. It's a little less perfect. And you scratch it up even more, or you put blank spots in, or it's skipping now. So you're destroying, basically, the record that has been playing over and over and over, the album, whatever it is, the audio file. And then you choose to create a new album. You write a new song, so to speak, a new audio. Now, if you've done this really well, you're able to bring in the new album so it replaces the old one, the old destroyed one. And I think that's my quick way of describing NLP. So you do this seek and destroy and replace, or seek and destroy and create. And some of this I do with clients. This is often part of the healing process for many people. Some NLP, some reimagining, but there is the destruction of the old. Like, there has to be disempowered in some way. It's either completely messed up so it becomes indecipherable or non-cohesive, or it's made to be, let's say, small, really tiny, so it doesn't take up as much energetic space as it used to. But here's the reason that most people have things cycling around. Behaviors they can't stop, emotions they can't seem to stop, feeling the same way and getting the same results, and then feeling the same way about those same results, or similar results anyway. The fourth reason that you are experiencing similar results, similar feelings, etc., is that your subconscious and your unconscious are not yet on board with your conscious beliefs, your conscious desires, the things that you're striving for, the goals that you set, let's say. So we need to actually reprogram these. Now, with the subconscious, what I find is that when we start to do a little bit of digging, we start to uncover things, that first layer that's just a little bit out of our awareness, that's more or less the subconscious. And we can become aware of it. We can bring the subconscious into consciousness. The unconscious may not want that. It might want to stay hidden. It may want to protect itself because it's trying to protect us. And so how do you heal that? There are ways to reach the unconscious without distressing it. There are loving, kind ways to reach the unconscious, to help it come into alignment with what's happening now. And most of these ways don't necessarily include constantly trying to figure out, when something or other happened in your childhood at a specific age. That is helpful. But once you know it, you know it. The unconscious is being impacted, not just in your childhood, and not just right now, but it's throughout your entire life. Your entire life takes whatever you got in childhood and then it adds on to it. And it makes up new stories and new meanings. And so by the time you become an adult, you're very, very layered with all kinds of things that your psyche has come up with. It's deduced. And it now has patterns of behavior, patterns of emotion. It has directives that it will want to carry out on your behalf to keep you safe, basically. And the human brain is considered to be the most complex system, in the known universe. You have more than 80 billion neurons, and each neuron can connect up to at least 10,000 other neurons. So there is an estimated 100 trillion connections in your brain. That's mind-blowing. So how do you, take apart every single one of those? Well, we know that in some situations, therapy can work. And in some situations, it doesn't. It falls flat. It leaves us wanting a whole lot more. Like, yeah, I have a little bit of information now. Okay, I thought about this stuff. Yeah, I remember a little bit of that. That's helping me put some perspective on things. But it's not actually causing healing in all cases. There are emotional therapeutic techniques that can do a lot more for you. Things like EFT, NLP, EMDR, for example. Those are just some. But they're not going to help you if all you do is keep looking for things that happened before you were 12. You've got to look at everything. And that stuff that gets us stuck in the muck is when we try to override what the subconscious and the unconscious are telling us. So instead of overriding the signals that might be messy, might not be hard to understand at first, instead we want to listen to those. We want to listen to what's happening. So we want to listen to ourselves, our feelings, our sensations, our inner messages, so we can acknowledge what's happening and then re-educate the old belief, the old perspective, and bring it up to speed with the new, current, or even the future situation with all the parameters of infinite possibility. And the best way I know how to do this is to feel into what feels like the truth. And at the same time, allow your feelings to flow without going down into a deep chasm with that. You want to then also bring in an observational standpoint. So you're observing yourself, and you bring in the energy of love. Now that is an amazing thing. Once love has entered, then there can be a reconciliation between the parts of ourselves that are believing different things. It's like a miracle. Love is a miracle. Love heals. And then we can take greater responsibility for our current choices. But we can only do this when we're accessing love while acknowledging the truth of the inner experience we're having. So included in all this is the forgiveness of ourselves for all our past actions, and at the same time, aligning with our values and our integrity. Now that may sound like a tall order, but I can promise you, if you set the intention to do your healing, and if you try to do this on your own and it's not successful, well, you would not be alone, first of all. This is not a natural skill that we have, that nobody taught us this when we were growing up. We're learning it now, though. And one thing we do know that works is having support. Creating an experience of love. Not just thinking, I love myself. Not just saying it, but actually creating the experience of love. So in the process of healing trauma, we then can come into higher integrity within ourselves in a whole new way, in a loving, kind way, where we can now take the responsibility for our behaviors, feelings, and choices, and then we can have a new behavior. We can be in a new response as well. And we can think new thoughts. And we will see the evidence that our unconscious and subconscious have been healed, because the result we get and the response we have is different. When we have healed the wounded self, We give ourselves permission to feel. And we also give ourselves permission to be seen by others. And it is through that process, we do not do it alone. We discover that vulnerability is no longer a weakness, but a strength. And now we can view the past with clear sight and without judgment of ourselves. We have softened the impact of traumas, and we can hold all parts of us with love and compassion. And we know that we have found a new level of wholeness. We become free of self-regret, and we are finally at home in our skin. So my invitation to you is to take one step toward your healing. What might that be for you? Would that be to hold yourself with loving kindness when you have feelings that you don't really want to feel, those uncomfortable ones? Would it be to reach out to a professional and say, I really want to look at this and I want to heal it. I want a new result in my life, and I'm willing to look at the hurt or the trauma so it can be loved into release. Consider for yourself what your next step might be. And if you can, give it to yourself. Bring it into your world. Welcome healing in. The last thing I'll say about this is that healing is almost never nice and neat and tidy. And it's amazing. It helps us become more of who we actually are and more of the possibility of who we can be. And may you find love in your heart for all the dark places, for all the hurts, for all the wounds. May you find a way to love them and receive even more love than you can imagine. That's it for today. Blessings and light, and I will see you again next week.
All right. If you're hearing this message, you have listened to our newest Say Yes to Your Soul episode all the way to the end. And for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I invite you to stay updated with me, and the best way to do that is to sign up for my free gift, 3 Steps for How to Reignite Your Soul Fire. And you can get that at tessafreegift.com, tessafreegift.com, or just go to the podcast website, sayyesToYourSoulPodcast.com, and that's where we have all the episodes and more. I wish you an amazing day.